All right, it's showtime on a Wednesday night. I assume everything's plugged in. I assume everything's connected. I assume I can hear myself. Well, I mean, I can't hear myself for some reason. I don't really have a monitor. Oh, yeah, I don't want that. I tried to find out if I had a monitor, but I realized I don't. Not in the way that I want to have a monitor, so it's not sounding right. But anyway, I don't need to hear myself. I can hear it in my own head. We are getting started here on the live Panther-Lair show, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know the deal we always ask you to do. Those of you who arrive early, your benefit is that you get to hear me talk about the website. I'm probably doing a bad job of that, promoting the website, promoting Panther-Lair.com and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com here in the opening, because those of you who show up early, I mean, you should be rewarded with the goods, with something to really make it worth your while to get here at 8:30. But I don't have anything. I should have like a really good recruiting nugget. Maybe that'll be the new gimmick. I'll start every show with like a recruiting nugget. So you want to be here at 8:30 so you don't miss any of that hot info. And then after I give the recruiting nugget, then I'll go into the spiel about youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and Panther-Lair.com. I don't have a recruiting nugget this week. Sincere Edwards committed or announced his commitment. They got a 4-star commitment this week. So another one on the board, move the class, at least at the time, back into the top 30. It's 4 stars in the class, should be 5 with Caleb Holmes, but he's still a high 3-star. We have to yell at rivals about that, and we will. Still on track for my prediction of 6 4-stars in the class. So there you go. There's your early arrival recruiting nugget. It's like if you show up for the concert on time and they actually start on time, they play a really good song right at the beginning. It's like that. That's what I'm doing here to make it worth your while to roll in to the live show at 8:30 on Wednesday nights. We'll bring Jim Hammett in here in a second, but of course, you know where you can find all of my content, and Jim's content is at Panther-Lair.com, the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. We covered all Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are interacting at Panther-Lair.com, just like you can interact during this live stream by hitting the chat screen over there. Put your comments and questions. We will answer as many of them as we can. If you want to make sure we get to your comment or your question, you can always be a super chatter. You click the little $sign down at the bottom, and you can contribute to the show. And we will guarantee to get to your comment or question, no matter how ridiculous it is. So that's always a good option for you. But if you have any questions or comments about Pitt football, Pitt basketball, Pitt recruiting, whatever it is, somebody who Voodoo IPA just mentioned the shirt. I've got my inaugural Backyard Brawl Crawl shirt on from 2017. I can't see the sponsors on the back. I know Panther-Lair.com is on the back. I don't know if Voodoo IPA was a sponsor or not, but either way, appreciate you shouting it out. Shout out to who did this? I'm drawing a blank. Pittsburgh Clothing Company, I think, ran this bar crawl. I actually didn't make it to this bar crawl, but when I attended a subsequent bar crawl, they hooked me up with a shirt. So, shout out to those guys. But the YouTube channel, what we ask you to do, of course, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. We have had a ton of it with training camp going on. I mean, all kinds of videos and interviews. We actually had a really good video today with Wes Durham and Mark Richt. They were at Pitt's practice for the ACC network. They talked to us after the practice, and it was good. I mean, it was about 8 minutes of those guys talking about how good of a program Pitt is. And they said they might be good this year. They have a chance to be the number 3 team in the conference or fight their way into the top 2. But they really talked mostly about the culture of the program. It was pretty good stuff. So if you haven't checked that out, go watch that video on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We have interviews with Bub Means. That one's getting a lot of positive response. People like his energy. PJ O'Brien was a good interview. Randy Bates and Frank Signetti were both good the last couple of days. Pat Narduzzi's always good, usually good, sometimes good. But those videos are all there as well. So you don't want to miss any of it. Go check it out, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, let's bring in our friend Jim Hammett and see what he is up to tonight as he joins us as always. Jim, how are you?
I'm good. So the TV cameras were there today. Did you sneak on the broadcast? I didn't really watch that closely.
So everybody is tweeting photos of, at one point when we were getting ushered out of practice, we walked behind where they were filming. So like behind Wes Durham and E.J. Manuel and Mark Richt. So the cameras were sort of facing us because we were behind those guys, and everybody's tweeting screenshots of how they got pictures of Hiles and Carter, because it's always Hiles and Carter. It's always Batman and Robin that always make it on the TV screen. Somehow those guys find the cameras. And so everybody's tweeting all the screenshots of Hiles and Carter. I walked in that group too. Stephen Thompson was in that group, and Carl and Jerry, everybody was in that group. But of course, only screenshots of Hiles and Carter, because they got, those guys, they're just drawn to the spotlight. So, that was about the extent of it. We all walked behind the cameras at that point. But it was, I don't know. Did you get a chance to watch? Was it on tonight, the ACC Network road trip to Pitt?
Yeah, I was kind of doing stuff, but I had it on in the background. I watched a good bit of it. I mean, it looked like a good infomercial for Pitt football, which is, I guess, what it's supposed to be. That's what the ACC channel is. That's Jeff Capel's idea, right?
Right. It's not that crazy of an idea that you promote the product. I mean, if you're going to call yourself the ACC network, I mean, I don't think that, I don't know why it's such a hard thing to figure out. But I mean, to their credit, I mean, when Wes Durham and Mark Richt talked to us, I mean, they were nothing but respectful. Like I was just saying a minute ago about the team this year, yes, but the program, I think, and it almost is like, as Wes Durham was running down all the accomplishments, the wins over the last, however many years, and wins since Narduzzi got there, and draft picks and all this stuff, I almost feel like, and maybe this isn't the case with Wes Durham or Mark Richt, but I think when people around the conference see those numbers laid out, I think they're surprised. They're like, oh, wait, Pitt has been that successful. You know what I mean? Like, they might be aware that Pitt won the ACC 2 years ago, but I don't think they're aware of just kind of how successful Pitt has been. Literally, like, if the conference has been Clemson and everybody else for the last 10 years, Pitt is arguably, and maybe not arguably, the number one team in that everybody else column. And I think, like, I don't know if you ask general ACC sports fan or general college football fan who's been the number one team from that other group, I highly doubt that very many of them would say Pitt. I don't know who they would say. Miami, just kind of blindly, or Florida State kind of blindly, even though they haven't had the success to back it up. I mean, who else would they really mention? I don't think Pitt would get most of the responses, but I'm not sure, like, who do you think it would be other than Pitt?
I mean, I think everyone would probably just default to Florida State and Miami, maybe North Carolina, because Mac Brown has some friends. But, like, I mean, I think whenever, like you said, when you lay it all out, by every metric, Pitt has been the second best team in the conference over the past 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, there's no really denying it. I mean, I think one of the graphics they showed on that program was Pitt has the most draft picks over the past 3 years, more than Clemson, more than Florida State, more than Miami. I mean, they're doing a pretty good job on the field, off the field, just kind of everything they're doing. So I think whenever they have the show, even the past couple of years, this is not the first time the ACC has done this, but anytime it happens, the hosts, the analysts are, pretty surprised about when they walk into Pitt and just how the whole operation looks.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And I think they ultimately do give it a lot of respect, maybe more than the rest of the media and the conference does. But, I don't know. It's, it was good to hear from those guys, though. I mean, I think Mark Richt really respects how Narduzzi runs the program. I think Wes Durham has a lot of respect for Narduzzi and Capel and the success that they've had. And, I mean, I think they all know that there needs to be sort of a torchbearer, other than Clemson. And no matter how much they want it to be Carolina and NC State and Florida State and Miami, you take what you got. And right now is Pitt, Pitt is kind of what they've got. Now, did you see this news that, so this is why I got distracted before, why we started the show at 8:31 as opposed to 8:30. Did you see this news about Condoleezza Rice pushing for Stanford to get into the ACC and George W. Bush advocating on behalf of SMU? And so I was trying to look through the list of prominent Florida State alums who could be advocating for the Seminoles in the SEC. And, there's Barry Horowitz, the WWF jobber, and Alan Ball, and Jen Sturger, who is pretty, famous in her own right. Bert Kreischer, that comedian who takes his shirt off. You know that guy?
Maybe
the machine. Yeah, you'd probably right. He takes his shirt off, and I mean, he's not in good shape, or at least he wasn't when he became, famous. I think he's probably gotten into better shape. But I was trying to find a famous politician, and I'm still scrolling through Burt Reynolds went to Florida State. I'm still scrolling through actors and entertainment. I wanted to see if there's a prominent politician who could advocate on behalf of Florida State. And, Yeah, I just scrolled through real quick, and there's nobody that jumps out. No prominent names like a Condoleezza Rice or George W. Bush. We won't spend a lot of time on conference expansion today, Jim. But do you have any new thoughts? And I mean, we passed the deadline for Florida State to announce that they're leaving for the 2024 season. To no one's shock, basically. I don't think you expected them to announce anything. I know I didn't expect them to announce anything. Talk now. Stanford and Cal talk, SMU talk. I don't know. Do you have any? Do we have anything new to add this week on conference expansion?
I don't think. I mean, obviously, there's this latest push, and I'm interested why Cal doesn't have a representative in this little power grab here. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think anything new has happened. I guess are you going to look up who Cal, the University of California, has to?
I'm not, because somebody on Twitter, I forget who it was like, I hope Marshawn Lynch advocates for Cal, which would be fantastic if Marshawn Lynch was the head guy. We were actually talking today. I was talking with Hiles and a few of the other guys as we were waiting for interviews about if the ACC were to absorb, say, 4 AAC teams, if you want to take a second and bring up the AAC just to see what we're working with here, what the candidates are. I think we all kind of agreed Tulane would be a good ad. I think Memphis would be interesting. SMU, I guess. And then I don't know, I don't really know who else would be appealing, East Carolina or FAU. And I'm not saying you would necessarily want to add 4 teams from the AAC, but if you're going to get yourself to 16 or 18, I guess, as it were, if you're going to get yourself to 18 with 4 AAC teams, does anybody jump out on that list?
The one thing that jumps out at me about that list is what happened to South Florida, from that 2007 season, whenever they used to be UCF, they had the 3-1 lead and lost it. So it's kind of interesting how they fell apart so quickly, and now they're not even a candidate. We're not even talking about them.
Yeah, they I don't even know who is South Florida's head coach now. I don't even know who's coaching South Florida.
There was a Charlie Strong and Willie Taggart. I don't know.
Willie Taggart there? Yeah. Oh, Alex Golish just got hired. So I don't know who did he replace. I mean, this is, there was a time when it was, good Lord. Jim Leavitt was during the good years, and then Skip Holtz, who I think was actually good. No, he went 16-21 there. Willie Taggart went 24-25. TJ Weist was in interim. Charlie Strong went 21-16 there. Jeff Scott, well, I don't even remember Jeff Scott, but he went 4-26 over 3 seasons. They haven't hired well. You know what I mean? Jim Leavitt did a great job, and Charlie Strong was supposed to be a good hire, but it wasn't. I can't really say Willie Taggart was a good hire because he blocked me on Twitter, so screw him. I take that personally. Tino, I'm looking at you. But I think they just haven't hired good coaches. They're in a talent-rich area. No school in Florida has an excuse for not having talent. You just have to hire good coaches, and you have to understand if you're USF, if you're UCF, if you're FAU or FIU or any of these schools, that when you strike gold, when you get the good coach, you're only going to get him for 3 years. So you got to capitalize. Now, maybe in the transfer portal era, they can do a little bit better with it. But yeah, as I look down that list of AAC teams of who could join the ACC, I kind of just glanced over them nah, I don't think the conference needs another Florida team, and they don't particularly need that one. But I'm not really sure who else. If it was Tulane, Memphis, and SMU, I'm not sure who would be the 4th team. I don't know if you take another Texas team, San Antonio or North Texas. That's none of that is helping the brand, but it gets you into more populated areas, I guess.
I guess if you take 3 of those teams, do you do the UConn thing finally?
UConn. If I was Pitt, I would fight against UConn because that was such a house of horrors for them up there. So many disastrous games, 3 basically. No, 4. 2004, 2006, 2008, 2010. It was all 2012 too. They never won up there.
I don't think
they never won up there.
What year was like DJ Hernandez had like they won like 46-45? I've heard
six. That was 2006.
I kind
They
of
might
remember.
have Pitt might have won up. Pitt won up there in 2008. Actually, Pitt won up there in the 2008. It was the season finale, and I remember that because I mean it was freezing cold, and the poor Sun Bowl representatives were at that game. And after the game, went into the locker room like, "You're going to El Paso" and all this stuff. So actually, so they won in 08, but they lost in 04, the Tyler Palco slide game. They lost in 2006, like you mentioned, the DJ Hernandez game. They lost in 2010 when they could have won the Big East, and what's his name? Randy Edsall went for it on 4th and like 2 from his own 20 to clinch that game. And they lost in 2012 because a week earlier they had gone out to Notre Dame, took Notre Dame into triple overtime, went up to UConn feeling all good about themselves, and they were down 24-0 at halftime. What a disastrous place to play for Pitt. For some reason, UConn was just, or maybe Pitt was just mediocre in those years. But yeah, if I was Pitt, I would like be strongly against UConn joining the conference, at least on the football side. It'd be fun to bring you back on basketball, though. I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
that would be a good time. But anyway, I don't think any of this is going to happen. I don't think they're going to add any teams from the AAC. I think Tulane would be appealing personally, and I think SMU could work too. But I don't know how far you want to dip into that well. So I don't know. That's just me. So what else is going on? So never mind conference expansion. Let's see. Well, there's really two things this week. One is the hype train for Pitt's offense. That it's going to be awesome this year because we decided we're going to talk about that all week. And then the other is basketball. Did you get a chance to follow much of the basketball, see much of the highlights or any of that game that got released on YouTube?
I didn't watch the game, but I did see some of the highlights and check the stats and what was given to us. So got a little bit of a feel for it.
I think if anybody came back with like a his reputation greatly enhanced, it was Carlton Carrington, starting at point guard in the first game, playing more point guard than I think any of us expected. I think we all talked about him he was the 2 and Jalen Lowe was the 1, right? I'm not misremembering in that, am I?
No.
That's okay. I wanted to make sure, because sometimes it was almost like a, in The Simpsons, like, Lenny White, Carl Black thing on his hand. Like I almost have to write it down like Jalen Point, Bub, 2 guard, but it seems like they're even more interchangeable than we thought before. That those guys and Dior Johnson could play either one of the backcourt spots and they're not locked in. I didn't think that was Carrington's game. I thought he was more the off-ball guard. I thought he was a shooter and driving and things like that. But if he can play the point, I mean, I think it just opens up so much more if you now have 3 ball handlers and potentially Ishmael Leggett as well. But with Lowe, Johnson, and Carrington all potentially being ball handlers, conceivably you've surpassed what they had last year when it was pretty much just Nelly Cummings and Jamarius Burton, right?
Yeah, I think you have 4 different guys that can run the point. And the thing that strikes me with Carrington, just even the brief clips I've seen, is he's big. Like he looks like a dude that would be playing at Kentucky. I mean, he has that kind of frame. So if you have that kind of athleticism running the point, I think that just opens up so much, like so many different things you can do. And you get the ball and go. And I think that's how they kind of want to play. Last year they did at times. Obviously, they were just older and a little bit slower. But I think the tempo, they want to play with some tempo. And I think they have 3 young guards that can make that happen.
Yeah, it was interesting. I feel like every defensive rebound, every turnover, man, it was just off to the races. Like they were just, I was like, guys, I don't know if Blake's Blake's in better shape, but I don't know if he's going to keep up with you here. So you guys better either be able to finish around the rim or, well, I guess Blake doesn't need to run all the way to the basket, right? If they're in transition, he just has to run to the 3-point line and just kick it out to him there, which they did. Like I was watching some of that, the second game, and I think the first, they won the tip-off and immediately tried to Jalen Lowe to Guillermo Diaz-Graham alley-oop that didn't convert. But when the Spanish team came back up the court, they got a steal and went right out in transition, and Leggett dribbled up and kicked it to Hinson for a 3. And I was like, okay, that'll work. You can do that all season. That'll be pretty effective. I think Leggett is an interesting guy because I think at Rhode Island, he had to be the man. He had to do everything. And he doesn't have to do that at Pitt. There are other guys at Pitt who can score. And I think he has to sort of get that. He has to kind of understand that and maybe not pull off the intensity, but just sort of understand there are other guys around him who can make baskets. And then Zach Austin is the transfer from High Point. I mean, he just continues to be really, really interesting. He's huge. I mean, you talk about size with Carrington. I mean, Austin is legit like 6'6", 6'7". Boy, I mean, the dunks are impressive. The running the court is impressive. The shooting is impressive. The blocks. I mean, we keep saying it, and we've said it a bunch of times. They didn't have a guy like him last year, other than somebody made the comparison of a taller Nike Sabandi. And that's kind of what he is. And it just sort of feeds into the idea that this team is going to be really different this year because they're built so differently from last year's team, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think so often in basketball, whenever you talk to guys in the game, they talk about being positionless. And that's kind of what Zach Austin feels like to me. I mean, he can defend probably 4 spots. I mean, he could probably take four or five different guys to the rim. I mean, he has so many different skill sets. And I think whenever you talk to him, you had an interview with him or something. I mean, he kind of said he likes to do those little things. He likes to rebound. He likes to play defense. So I think he's going to come up and do a lot of those things. But I think he also showed in Spain, he's going to score a lot more than maybe a lot of people realize. And I think a lot of this trip was kind of learning what they have. Because, again, you don't know what the competition is like. You know they're not quite ready in ACC game shape. But you can at least get an idea or you kind of a broader picture of what they are. And even if they weren't whole, I mean, Fetty wasn't there. I think Papa Conte didn't play the second game. Jorge's hurt. So, I mean, they're still missing a lot of parts. But I think what this team can do, maybe more so than last year, is that they have options. They have different lineup combinations. I mean, last year there was only like a certain way they could play to be effective, to be a good team. And that was probably playing 6, maybe 7 guys. I think they could do more this year. I think they can go deeper. And that's what we suspected, but now we got to see it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you kind of make a good point too. I mean, it's August, so we're seeing some of these things and saying, well, this or that. There's a long way until the season, but I feel like it's hard to come out of this Spain trip without feeling anything other than being encouraged. And it was only 2 games, and they were exhibition games, and they had a weird horn. It was it was a Spanish horn, you know. It was not a typical American basketball horn, so that took some getting used to. But it clearly a work in progress, but the pieces look really good. And I think this is also a good trip for like team chemistry and bonding. I mean, I think you put guys together on a trip like that, they're inevitably going to get closer. And I'm more optimistic about the team now than I was before the Spain trip. Not to take too much out of it, but I am more optimistic just because the freshman guards look really good. I think Dior Johnson looked really comfortable out there. And Austin and Leggett look like they're going to be able to play at the ACC level. And Blake Hinson looks really, really good. So, good trip for them. We'll see if anybody jumps in with comments or questions in there, and we'll address that. But flipping over to the football side, I've been down to training camp this week. You covered a practice last week, or maybe 2 practices last week. But all before they had this scrimmage on Saturday. The scrimmage on Saturday, we heard about they completed a lot of deep passes, and the first and second team offense only had 1 turnover total. And this started the hype train for the offense. Now we're convinced that the offense is going to be good. And I keep trying to pull back on it because I'm myself getting caught up in it. I start thinking about Bub Means, and I think about familiarity, and I think about the offensive line, and I think about just having some good players. Talk me down remind me again why we were not bullish on this offense, because I'm getting too caught up. I'm getting camp brain. There's too much sun, and I'm just getting my mind is getting warped by this optimism about the offense. But remind me why we were not bullish about this offense.
Okay, let's see. Phil Dracovic has not been healthy in 2 seasons.
Yep, that's it. Keep going.
Izzy Abandakanda was kind of their whole offense last year, and he's gone.
Yes. Good.
If one of the 2 returning receivers gets hurt, they're going to start a true freshman at some point.
I like how one of the 2 returning receivers was like a clause in there, but that carried a lot of weight too, because that's a very good point as well. Okay, good. Is that it? Do we have any more, or was that basically it?
That's kind of like, those are the main overarching points there that it's like, yeah, like all this sounds good, but like some of it's like hanging by like thread and needle here. Like if somebody gets hurt in that wide receiver room, that could really make things interesting.
And these are, and the receivers we're talking about are, I feel like I've looked at these stats so many times this week. I don't know why I need to recheck it. Oh, yeah. Konate Mumfield averaged less than 10 yards per catch. Bub Means barely had 400 yards last season. And combined, they caught 3 touchdown passes. So it's not exactly like the 2 returning receivers were, coming off hugely productive seasons to begin with. And now there's a whole lot of hope being staked on them. I tell you what's remarkable is the buzz. And, again, I'll admit to driving this train to a fair amount, to a fair extent, but the buzz around Bub Means is getting so loud, and it's from coaches and players. It's from people watching practice. It's from those of us just kind of like observing things. What in your view, what is the ceiling for Bub Means this year, in your opinion?
I mean, he could be an all-conference wide receiver. He absolutely can be. He's going to have the targets. I mean, he's going to be probably Phil's favorite target, or but no, I would say he's going to be Phil's top target. So, I mean, he could be an all-conference player. There's no doubt about it. He's 6'3", 210, and he's very athletic and can jump out of off the field. I mean, what the Athletic came out this week with their freak list, like top 100 freaks of college football. He's on it. And like you said, he had 400 yards last year. Like, it's not like his game really showed that he's this great freak, but if you go to a Pitt practice, he immediately steps out. Like when the Steelers get back to the South Side, and I think it would be this week, if he started running routes for Kenny Pickett, and put on a Steeler jersey, nobody would know the difference. Like he looks like an NFL wide receiver.
Yeah. Who most NFL ready looking player? Just a quick digression here, because you just said that. I mean, on Pitt's roster, I mean, I already know who the right answer is, but I'm curious what you would say.
Well, you're going to say Bengali Kamara.
How did you get that? What a wild guess. I can't believe you guessed that correctly. He said he's up to 230 pounds now in the interview today. Did you look at that interview? I mean, the guy is jacked. I mean, he is a freak. I don't know how he didn't make the freaks list. I think Bruce Feldman called Narduzzi and asked him about it, and I don't know how he didn't make the freaks list. I mean, you can't tell me he is not one of the top 100 freaks in college football. But anyway, I mean, maybe that was too easy. But who would you pick? Would you? I mean, or is it just obviously Bengali again?
I think it's Kamara on defense and probably Bub Means on offense. And I mean, Matt Gonsalves looks like he could. Yeah, he looks like an NFL offensive lineman too. And
Ryan Bear's built like an NFL guy.
Ryan Bear it's scary that he's 19 years old and how big he is.
Yeah, he's I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't know what his role is going to be this year. I mean, he's going to play. Obviously, I don't know if he's going to be a starter to open the season. I would not be shocked at all if he's a starter to close the season. And I think he plays in every game. And you don't want to have too much of a rotation, but I don't know how you keep him off the field. Even as a redshirt freshman, I don't know how you keep him off the field. I mean, I think he really is that good. And especially if you're playing him at right tackle, because I've seen they've been using Mac and Salves more at left tackle, which I think is a move that makes sense. I think people would talk about that from time to time of if Gonsalves is their best lineman, why not move him to left tackle, where it's, you typically put your better player. And so I think they're doing some of that. And then so putting Bear at right tackle seems like a no-brainer. But Branson Taylor's still there too, I guess. And it's a good problem to have. But here we go again. This offensive line that looks really good. Another reason to be bullish on the offense. Another reason to think that they might actually get it this year. And I think I think the familiarity element is important too. I think back to Kenny Pickett coming back for a third year with Mark Whipple. You know what I mean? And he didn't want to learn a new offense. And I feel like that spoke to the challenges in getting into a new offense. And now you've got, everybody they're going to rely on this year has experience in this offense. I mean, Bub Means is one of the newest guys. He got here last summer. Konate Mumfield's been here for 18 months. Phil, this is his third year playing in this offense with this coordinator. Bartholomew getting his second year, 18 months of working in this offense. I don't think that's unimportant, and I think that actually will help them. I would go so far as to say, you could tell me true or false. How about this? True or false? what's the best way to word this? The biggest impediment to Pitt's offense in 2023 will be the health of Phil Dracovic. More than talent or caliber of play or execution, that if he stays healthy, their offense will be good.
I think that's a true statement. I mean, we've been saying for months now. I mean, I think this whole season really comes down to how well he plays and if he could stay healthy. I mean, it's not unique to any college football team, any football team on any level that you need your quarterback to be good, but this team really needs that. I mean, last year they almost, they won 9 games almost in spite of quarterback play. Their starting quarterback threw 10 touchdown passes. I mean, like they still found a way to win 9 games. There's a lot of good pieces still, off that ACC championship team, off that team that won 9 wins a year ago. I mean, a lot of these guys are still around. I think they even said on the ACC, at practice today, they said, a lot of these guys they've just been through it. I mean, it's just part of the program now. So they weren't necessarily starters. Like you wouldn't necessarily say like David Green and Tyler Bentley have been starters, but they've played like 50 games in a Pitt uniform.
Yeah.
They have so many guys like that. So there's a lot of pieces around. And if the quarterback can bring it all together, I mean, there's a lot to like about it.
Yeah. You just got to find a way to keep him, like you said, in good health throughout the fall. You know who can help you stay in good health throughout the fall, Jim?
Oh, Chris Gates.
Our Chris Gates, of course. The Wednesday Panther-Lair live show sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. If you have a health or fitness goal and need help achieving it, you go to chrisgatesfitness.com to learn more about how online fitness coaching works and how you can benefit from working with Chris. Chris will work together with you to create a fully personalized exercise program and pair it with a customized nutritional strategy that works you toward your goals. And he'll be there every step of the way to support you through the process. Whether you want to build muscle, burn fat, develop more functional strength, train for a sport or event, or just generally develop healthier lifestyle habits, online coaching is one of the fastest and most efficient ways to get you from where you are now to where you want to go. And Chris loves working with fellow Pitt fans. He's a diehard Panther fan and subscriber to both the Panther-Lair podcast and Panther-Lair.com. So learn more at chrisgatesfitness.com and be sure to mention Panther-Lair when you apply. Real quick, as we continue to scan the list of prominent Florida State alums, Jim, I have actually found a few. Jason Altmaier, who was a congressperson in Pennsylvania. You remember that name, Jason Altmaier? He went to Florida State. Do you remember that name?
I don't think he really carries the same weight as George W. Bush.
No. But we're looking. Well, how about Charlie Crist? Charlie Crist went to Florida State, and Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, he went to Florida State. Matt Gaetz went to Florida State. How about that? How about if Matt Gaetz advocates Florida State as a member of the SEC? Do you think he'd make that sale?
I don't think Florida State or SEC really wants Florida State.
Well, no, that's why they need a politician to advocate on their behalf. What if we send our old friend Craig Meyer as a Matt Gaetz doppelganger to advocate on Florida State's behalf, getting into the SEC? All right, that's enough of that. I'm not going to scroll through any more of those names because I don't care anymore. Kenny Johnson has been coming up a lot as we've talked quite often about freshman wide receivers and which guys are going to play and who's most likely. I feel like we've often settled on Johnson, haven't we? Hasn't he been the guy? Like I think all along we've said, all right, one guy is definitely going to play, probably 2 will play, and there's a possibility of 3. And as we've gone through those and we've ranked them, I think Johnson has always been like 1 or 2 on the list, hasn't he?
Yeah. And I had a conversation with some guys the other day, and I think it's a good sign that in spring ball, everyone was really high on Izzy Polk and Lamar Seymour. And I think it's an even better sign that it seems like Kenny Johnson and Zion Fowler-El are having a better fall camp than those guys. So, yeah. I mean, chances are they're going to hit on at least 2 of these guys overall and maybe 3 and maybe all 4. I mean, if the guys, they were impressed with them in spring ball and these guys that just got here kind of outperforming them, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. And, Pat Narduzzi said today, they talked about Javonte Royal, the 4-star DB who came in and played corner for a while and safety and then moved to wide receiver this spring. And then he moved back to defensive back. And he said part of the thing Narduzzi said was, since some of these young guys basically said some of the young receivers, the freshmen, have passed a guy like Royal on the depth chart. And it was like, Wow. That's, I mean, just even more acknowledgement of how far ahead these young guys are. It's pretty impressive. And I think we even talked about this before, that Zion Fowler was not a guy I had circled. I think he was pretty soundly, when we talk about like ranking 1 through 4, he was 4 for me of who was most likely to get on the field. I thought, Johnson as maybe the most talented, Polk and Seymour as the guys who were here in the spring, Fowler, we'll see you in a couple of years. You know what I mean? I hope you don't become the next Miles Alston, but he has just like, it seems like day after day, he's just making plays out there. They needed that wide receiver class to be really good. And it kind of looks like it's coming to fruition. I mean, like you said, they're going to hit on at least, it seems like just by the odds, they should hit on at least 2 out of these guys. They might hit on even more than that. And these guys should all have opportunities, some this year and all of them next year, right? If Bub leaves after this year, which I assume he will, I mean, it's going to be Kanate, Mumfield, and then what? Like Shea Wabuko and Addison Copeland and these 4 freshmen. I mean, these guys are all going to play. I mean, it's a heck of an opportunity. It's probably even an opportunity for the 2024 recruiting class, which makes it even weirder that they've only been able to get like 1 guy in that class. I mean, I feel like we've talked about it before. How many more do they need in that class? I mean, do you think, can they even try for 3 at this point? Or because they've, gotten to middle of August and they only have 1, they're probably only going to be able to get 2. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally you would probably like to add 2, and maybe some things fall into their lap in December. I mean, that's happened before, and with coaching changes and transfer portal, anything can happen. So, I mean, I think at this point you're probably looking for another high school wide receiver, and you're probably going to the transfer portal for some help for next year. I mean, immediate help. I think that would probably be kind of what they're looking for. And if Bub has a good year, then they have something to sell.
Yeah. Unless you feel like really, really good about Johnson, Seymour, Polk, and Fowler, maybe you don't need a transfer because you don't want to scare one of those guys off, and you feel like they can hang with it. Josh Newark says, does the Bub Means hype train change your 2-year-old prediction about Israel Bandicannon and Rodney Hammett? So 2 years ago, Jim, in August, leading into 22, or no, last year. It wasn't 2 years ago. It was last year. It was last year during training camp. I predicted in one of our 3-2-1 columns that Izzy would lead the ACC in rushing in 2022, and Rodney Hammond would lead the ACC in rushing in 2023. First of all, would you have agreed with that prediction a year ago at this time? Second of all, how much, if Bub really does come alive and has a big season, let's get really crazy with it, 1,000-yard season, does that take Rodney Hammond out of the running to potentially be the leading rusher in the conference?
The first part of that question, yeah, I probably could have gotten on board with that prediction a year ago. I've always been pretty high on Rodney Hammond. I thought there was times where I thought he was better than Izzy until Izzy blew up, last year. But I mean, I don't expect him to lead the ACC in rushing this year, and it might not necessarily be to the passing game. I think just by nature, I think the running back room, they're going to split carries up a little bit more, and I think they're going to throw the ball a little bit more. So yeah, I mean, would it shock me if Rodney Hammond has a 1,000-yard season? Not at all. I mean, I think he's more than capable of doing that. I don't know if he's going to have that 1,500-yard, 20-touchdown season that Izzy just had, though.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of need to be able to break some big runs to put up that kind of number. Although to the notion, I mean, to Josh's question, as far as, Bub Means, last year they had a 1,400-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver. So it's not completely out of the question. And that was on an offense that didn't have a great passing game. It's not completely out of the question. We were actually having this conversation today, and we'll probably bring it. We were doing some over-unders today during training camp. We might actually do this next week. I might make a list of over-unders and put them to you. But Rodney Hammond, what do you think is the minimum rushing total he would need this year that would lead to him leaving Pitt after this season and trying for the NFL? Like, is there a number you think would do it? Is it 1,000 yards? Is it like, I mean, some of it will depend on how many games he plays, but let's say he stays relatively healthy. What did Izzy play last year? 11 games? Let's say he plays 11 games. Is it 1,000 yards and he goes? Or do you think he would go with less? What's the minimum amount he would need to leave?
I mean, I think it would be 1,000. I mean, just like the trend of the running back position in the NFL right now, it's like you kind of want to just get into the league and you don't really care where you get drafted and you hope you just catch on somewhere. I mean, you have like what Dalvin Cook was fifth in the NFL last year in rushing and he got cut.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's
Yeah.
just where the position is right now. So if you have the opportunity to get in the league and probably get drafted, even if there's things you can improve on, like as a senior, you should just go. I mean, just get in the league, get a paycheck, start playing, because by the time you're like 27, like in the NFL's eyes, you're washed up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. TRR says DeAndre Jules looks like an entirely different player physically on some of the videos. Hearing anything on him making a push to start? Randy Bates actually talked about him today, had some good things to say about, I think Pat Narduzzi did as well, but let me get Randy Bates' quote here. He says, DeAndre has lost a bunch of weight. He's still a monster size-wise, and he has figured it out. He's really hard to block, and he's way more athletic now. He's moving as good as he's ever moved, and he'll play a lot of ball for us. I think when you look at the defensive tackles, right, I mean, there's Devin Danielson, David Green, Tyler Bentley, and then it's open. And it's open for Jules. It's open for Elliott Donald. It's open for Sean Fitzsimmons. I guess conceivably you could throw Isaiah Neal in there too as a true freshman. I think Jules is just as likely, if not more so, than all of those other guys. You know what I mean? I think, sure, I could almost, at the beginning of camp, I would have said you could draw a name out of a hat. Some of this praise we heard today makes me think Jules might have the inside track to be that fourth guy. And I think if you're in that 4-man rotation, you potentially could start, right? I mean, I feel like the coaches sometimes draw names out of a hat of which two of those D tag. Like last year it was always Kalijah Cansey, but I feel like they, sometimes would draw a name out of a hat of who started next to him,
Yeah, I forget the number Partridge always says. Like he always says he's like, I want to go into the season with 10 guys that can play, and that's tackle and end combined.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really look at it, there's pretty much almost every defensive tackle they have right now can play. They probably with the exception of Isaiah Neal, just because he's younger. But I mean, they have 6 guys that could probably get on the field and they could at least feel comfortable with. And I not one of them is like this great standout, probably all conference guy, but they have like 6 guys that can play. What's their grade? Winning football, or whenever Narduzzi talks about a scrimmage, like we could play winning football with these guys. I think they have 6 guys that can do that at defensive tackle.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like to my point about who started last year, it was like Devin Danielson started like 6 games. Tyler Bentley started 1 game next to Cansey. David Green started like 6 games, 7 games. I mean, it was just kind of not completely random, but it sort of feels a little bit random. Trivia question for you, Jim. 2 Pitt defensive players started every game last year. Can you name them?
Shane Simon.
Yes.
And I'm got to think of the other one. Because I don't think it was Marquez, because I think he missed the game.
He missed the Rhode Island game. You're right.
Eric Hallett.
Eric Hallett. Very good. Nice work, Jim.
He wasn't supposed to play in the bowl game, but then he ended up playing anyway. So
he did. Yeah, he's the only one, and he's the only one who started the same position all 13 games. Simon started at money linebacker for 12, and then started it in the middle on the final game. Let's see here. Scroll through some comments and questions. Oh yeah, super chatter here. Tito Panther. Tito Panther has a lot of comments, and I don't really know what ones we should go to. Here, Jim, you ever go to the wine cellar in Gallitzin?
No.
All right. Tito Panther says Yarny, Yarny, Yarny. Yeah, he's a big Nate Yarnell fan. Don't really hear a lot of talk about him. Says long live the ACC. I told you he's got a lot of comments. If you and me got into a fight, who wins? I think we're both too lazy to ever actually get into a fight, so that wouldn't do anything. Jim, when was the last time you had a sundowner?
It's been a couple years, because after like Coney Island closed and like it's been reopened, I haven't been there as much.
Okay.
This is Johnstown cuisine we're talking here.
I'm just moving on to the next one. He says 1,400 yards. I'm guessing he talks about Rodney Hammond. We talked about, we talked about, his yardage in the NFL and stuff like that. If they throw the ball a little bit more, and if they maybe spread the carries a little bit more. You know what I mean? If Sibo Flemister gets a little bit more than Hammond did last year, if those guys stay healthy. I mean, part of Rodney Hammond's lower usage last year was being hurt for a bunch of games. I mean, do you see the scenario unfolding where he rushes for 1,400 yards?
I guess that would be like tied to like if Jurkovec got hurt and they kind of had to lean on the run more, then maybe. But like, I mean, I think if everyone stays healthy and like the way they're talking about their offense, I doubt he's going to get to 1,400.
Yeah. It doesn't feel. It feels to me like they might spread the ball around more in the running game and that they might throw it a little bit more. I think they'll still run it a lot, and I think they'll be good at running it a lot. And it's actually one more question from Tito that we'll take here of how many carries does Derek Davis get this year? And I hear a lot about Rodney Hammond. I hear that Sibo Flemister's doing well, and they keep talking up Daniel Carter a lot. I don't know where Davis fits in though, just quite yet. You know, like maybe a little bit as a third or fourth guy, and maybe a lot more next year. But I don't really know where he fits into this rotation as we sit here in the third week of training camp.
Yeah, I going into training camp and in the summer, I kind of thought Davis would find a role, but you're hearing less and less about him as camp goes on.
Yeah. More rushing attempts this year, Derek Davis or Daniel Carter?
See, that's interesting because every year, like Daniel Carter is like the spring game legend. Like who used to have like all those crazy, like whenever you remember the old summer league, the basketball summer league.
Oh yeah.
There used to be like some superstars in that league, and like, but that's kind of Daniel Carter. Like he always has these great, awesome like spring games, and you hear about him. Then like when the season rolls around, he's kind of back to fullback.
More offensive touches this season, Daniel Carter or Carter Johnson?
I'd say Daniel Carter.
Oh, so okay, I'm going to spend all this time talking about how I don't think Daniel Carter is going to have much of a role, how he's just this spring camp hero. We hear so much about him, but he's not really going to do anything, but he's still going to touch the ball more than Carter Johnson.
Well, like Carter Johnson's what? Like an H-back third tight end? I mean, like how many like realistic passes is he going to get? Like, especially if like Malcolm Epps does anything at all.
Okay, more offensive touches, Carter Johnson or Malcolm Epps?
I mean, I would think Malcolm Epps. Like he's an actual like inline tight end, like former wide receiver at Texas. Like it seems like he should be like a red zone target, or if nothing else.
Over under 10.5 receptions for Malcolm Epps in 2023.
I don't know, man. I mean, like how many catches did the tight ends have last year? We had this conversation before. So
see, this has been
let's just do this like for an hour next week.
Well, no, I have lots of, because I mean we were talking about this today. I have lots of over-unders, but it's great that we went from Daniel Carter is a training camp hero, never really produces in the season, but he'll still touch the ball more than Carter Johnson. Malcolm Epps will touch the ball more than Carter Johnson because he was a former wide receiver, and he's a red zone target. He's this and that. But you can't commit to him catching 11 passes in 13 games.
I'll go over the 10.5.
Over 10.5. That's great. Last year, Gavin Bartholomew caught 21. Carter Johnson caught 6. And you want to count Ryan Jacoby catching a pass? He caught it as a tight end. So 27, 28, and Kai Wright caught a pass. So the tight ends last year caught 29 passes. Phil has to be better at throwing to the tight ends, right? I mean, he's done it in the past. It's part of this offense. I mean, the tight ends have to see the production go up. Like, what did I just say? 29 passes. I think Gavin Bartholomew catches more than that himself this season. You agree?
I do. I mean, I just think I've said that before. I mean, you had a quarterback that just wasn't used to having that option in the middle of the field. So, I mean, I think Phil Jurkovec's going to look for it more. So, I mean, they talk all along about how he knows how to run this offense. And, yeah, I mean, whenever, like, Boston College's good season, they had Hunter Long, who was, like, a third-round NFL pick. Like, they use the tight end. Like, Cignetti and Jurkovec will use the tight end if there's one available.
Let's see. Ryan says, heard nothing about Todd Hill this camp. I thought he might have been a good walk-on, was a stud at Duquesne. Should we be worried Nate Temple is listed as a top 3 defensive end? Todd Hill, I don't really have much thought there. imagine he'll contribute on special teams. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Todd Hill?
I mean, I don't think it's a good sign that I'm taller than Todd Hill. Like for his chances to play ACC football, like I'm like 6 foot on a good day, probably 5'11", and like I can like see over top of Todd Hill.
Should, I mean, like, so Pitt lists him as a defensive lineman. I guess he's playing D end. I suppose. Should they move him? Should he play linebacker or something? They list him at 5'10", 240. Should he be playing linebacker? I think he was a linebacker at Duquesne, and he was an all-conference linebacker at Duquesne. So,
but his like specialty was like rushing the passer. He was kind of like that Juan Price, like he's a linebacker, but like we just like kind of stick him at end and just let him chase the quarterback. Like I watched his Duquesne tape, and like that's kind of what he is.
Yeah, I'm looking at his stats here on the Pitt site too. He played 31 games at Duquesne. He had 34 tackles for loss and 15 and a half sacks. But he also, I mean, he had 144 tackles in 31 games. I mean, that's what, 5 tackles per game, a little less than 5 tackles. I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's really any role for him at defensive. I don't know if there's any role for him at linebacker or fullback or anything. It's special teams probably, right? I mean, that's probably the best outcome for Todd Hill. And then as far as Nate Temple, they're talking him up. They're giving him a lot of praise. I tell you what I want to see, honestly. I want the all-Western PA starting defensive line. I mean, I want to go Deion Hayes, Devin Danielson, David Green, Nikai Johnson. That's what I want to see. I think it might be their best defensive line, like talent-wise. And I just think it would be cool to have an all-Western PA defensive line. Don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of like always like, whenever they talk up the recruiting, dream and they send out the graphics, like that was definitely something they were all sold on. Like, hey, you guys can all play together. So I think there's going to be, times throughout the season where that combination or Sean Fitzsimmons or Elliott Donald, like they have a lot of Western PA defensive linemen, so that they have that kind of combination.
Yeah, that's I was just thinking they could go those 4 up front and then Steph Hall and Donovan McMillan at safety, and you'd have like 6 out of the and if MJ Devonshire starts, you could have 7 starters on defense from Western PA, right? Am I forgetting anybody else they could slide in there? Todd Hill, I guess.
Like Cruz Brookins, like
Cruz
jumps.
Brookins, yeah. That would count. Yeah, but realistically, Braylon Lovelace. Lovelace is getting a lot of positive pub, man. Lovelace and who was it? Randy Bates today mentioned Braylon Lovelace and Kyle Lewis as 2 young linebackers who are really making a push. I mean, count me in the crowd that's surprised by Lovelace. Not that I thought he'd be a bad player, but I didn't expect him to make this kind of impact early on, particularly now with Jordan Bass at the same position. And I think Bass is getting a lot of praise as well. But Lovelace, he's big too. He's bulked up. I forget. Since I have Pitt's website open here, I want to see what they list him at. Official listing. They list him at 220. He's bigger. I don't know if he's 220. I mean, but he was like 185 pounds last summer. So, it wouldn't surprise me if he's cleared 210 or something. I'm not sure if he's 220, but he might be close. Let's see here. What else have we got? We got a lot of Tito comments here. Tito Panther wants to know if Beagle Panther will ever be allowed to post again. I don't see why he would need to be. I think he's found new life on the board. Tito also says the poster's uncle heard that Pitt is getting an on-campus stadium. What do you know about this, Jim?
I think there's more buzz around an on-campus stadium now than there probably has been in the past 25 years of that rumor being dispersed. I mean, I don't
really.
I mean, yeah, there's a few people that will do like the wink and they at least looked into it, but I don't know how far it really is ever going to get off the ground. But I think there's at least been like they looked at it, they checked on the feasibility of it, and I don't know for a long time if they ever did that. So.
That's the most serious response anything Tito Panther has ever, that's the most serious, sincere response to anything that Tito Panther has ever said before. You went in a completely different direction. I did not expect a serious answer.
Well, I said I didn't need a sundowner. I mean, that was sincere. That's honest.
True. Yeah. Wait, are you Tito Panther? Are you asking yourself questions? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tito Panther, final one from Tito Panther, who's been a super chatter here all over the place. Do you think by next year Stanford He's saying Cal and SMU are in the ACC. No, not by 2024. By 2030, do you think those three are in the ACC?
I don't. Sure.
It's impossible. I mean, it's impossible. There's no way. I'm going to talk about this on the morning pit tomorrow. For all this like positive stuff about the offense this week, there is that nagging voice saying, does this mean the defense is bad? I'm still a little concerned about the safeties here. And we'll probably talk about this, as the season, over the next 2 weeks as the season approaches. But that's a hard position. I mean, those are hard positions in this defense. And you've got guys who have been in the defense for a while. I mean, PJ O'Brien's been around for a little bit. Javon McIntyre's been around for a little bit. This is Steph Hall's third year. So they should be familiar with it. They should have some knowledge, but they don't have a lot of playing time. Are you concerned like I am that the learning curve and the growing pains will come back to bite them in the first few weeks of the season?
Yeah, I think I've said before, I think it's going to be a little shaky at first and we'll get better. I mean, because even when Brandon Hill and Eric Hallett took over, like Brandon Hill had that like little like 3-game like starting stint when Paris Ford left the team, and like Hallett was at least playing cornerback and getting his feet wet. Like PJ O'Brien really has only played special teams and a couple snaps on defense. Like Javon McIntyre didn't really get serious snaps until like the very end of last year. So it's like, this is going to be really new for them to just be the guy and like be the back end, like the last line of defense of Pitt's defense. So yeah, I think it's going to be a little shaky at first. And I think whenever you posted like the hype train like thread on Panther-Lair, like I think like the fifth guy down was like, do our safeties suck? And I'm like, I don't know what poster said that, but I was like, I like the way he thinks.
Yeah.
I mean, take a good thing.
No, there has to be like an equal and opposite reaction. You know what I mean? Like there has to be like a balance, a yin and a yang for Pitt fans of good and bad. If there's good, there has to always be a bad side to it. I think PJ O'Brien's key, and Josh Newark says PJ O'Brien has tons of talent, and Narduzzi's giving him shout outs. Maybe it's come together for him. I have a fair amount of faith in Javon McIntyre. I think he's gotten it together. It seems like he's got a lot of the coaches are talking him up, and it seems like he's figured out details and all of that kind of thing. To me, I mean, O'Brien, who will probably be playing the field safety and kind of the last line of defense back there, he's got the toughest job. He's going to be the one who's going to have to put it together. And if he doesn't, McIntyre can probably play there and somebody else could step in at the boundary safety. But I think a lot's riding on PJ O'Brien this year and riding on him maturing and being responsible on the field. And I'm going to kind of have to wait and see. He's going to have to show me that he's actually got it before I can believe, because we've just seen so many instances of him letting his emotions get the better of him. He can't, like, you screw up like that on special teams a few times, that's bad. You screw up like that on defense, now you're talking about points. You know what I mean? You're giving up points when you make mistakes like that. And I don't know. I mean, I can't even say I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm just very much wait and see with PJ O'Brien.
Yeah, I can see that. And if you recall, like the past 2 years, like the story with him during training camp was like, Pat Narduzzi always said he didn't know how to go half speed. Like he would like get in trouble for like tackling people. And like, yeah, you want that. You want someone that's like that aggressive, that loves playing football, that loves making a play. But like with that position, there's a lot of discipline. And like dudes like Eric Hallett, like they knew exactly where they needed to be. Like sometimes it looked like they weren't in the right spot, but it was like because they were covering for someone else. Like I'm with you. I need to see PJ O'Brien go through a couple games this season to see if he really has that.
Yeah. All right. Last question real quick here from Justin says, do players that redshirted in the COVID year get an extra year too? It means someone like Zach Austin has 3 years left instead of 2. I believe so. I think anybody who was on a roster in 2020 gets the extra year. And so, yeah, I think, Zach Austin was a freshman in 2020-21. He was a redshirt freshman 2 years ago, a redshirt sophomore this past year. So it'd be a redshirt junior this year, redshirt senior next year, and then a potential super senior the year after that. I've never heard anything to the contrary on that. I don't know, Jim, if you have, but I mean, I think even if you redshirted in 2020, you still get the extra year, right?
That's how I've interpreted it. So I mean, like like Pitt has really benefited from this as a school as much as anyone, just with Kenny Pickett. But like, I'm kind of excited for this to be over and just like things just being like, or you have like 5 years or 5 years and 4 seasons of playing. Like, I'm kind of ready to get back on that track and not having to figure out like, okay, well, this guy has 2 years left, 3. Like, I'm kind of done. I'm over it.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty much cycling out of it. You know what I mean? Like the recruiting class of 2020 right now, 20, 21, 22, 23, the recruiting class of 2020 is in their 4th year. So those would be the, like that's the last class who would be eligible for it. Right. So you're going to start moving out of it. Those guys would still have the opportunity to come back next year. Like Bengali Kamara will have the option to come back next year if he wants to do it. Somebody like Solomon DeShields presumably could come back for 2 more years. Since he's a redshirt junior now, but we're cycling out it, and you're seeing fewer and fewer every year. We're seeing fewer guys come back every year at Pitt. I mean, that first year was like huge. I think it feels like everybody came back, but it's been less numbers every year, and I think that'll be the case. So we're to the point where there's it's only a handful of guys, and I think the coaches probably want it that way too, because they want to they need to rebuild their programs. They need to bring in bigger recruiting classes and have space for those prospects. But yeah, as far as I understand it, I think it's I think Zach Austin's got that kind of eligibility left. I don't know that he would use it, but I think he's got it available to him. All right, I think that about does it for our hour tonight, Jim. It's been a lot of fun as always. Of course, we'll be back at training camp tomorrow for practice number Thursday of week 3, heading into final week of training camp next week. It's gone kind of fast, and the season will be here before we know it. So stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com for all the Pitt coverage, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and then, of course, right here on YouTube, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe so you never miss any of our Pitt video content. Thanks to everybody in the chat tonight. Thanks to the super chatters, which is one guy. Thank you. Jim, thanks for hanging out tonight, and we will catch up with everybody again next Wednesday for a